Well, better late than never. I'm sure Expedition 33 is all you've seen in the gaming space over the past couple months, and yep, I'm also here to pitch in my 2 cents about its cinema-level storytelling. Yeah, the whole game might just be the greatest experience I've ever taken a part in, but screw all that. All I need to convince you that this game does it different is the first 30 minutes. So if you haven't experienced what might be the most emotionally moving half hour of gameplay I've ever witnessed, this is your spoiler warning. Because the magic of this prologue, and really the game as a whole, boils down to one key storytelling element: show don't tell. And if me telling you what happens makes what they show you tell you, and not just show you instead of telling you, that wouldn't be showing you not tell. Welcome to Figuring Out Fantasy. Today I'm going to be gushing about arguably the best prologue I've ever played through. Yup, it's right up there with examples like The Last of Us and BioShock, but this time around with the added flair of a romantic tragedy. The kind of intro that leaves you with your jaw on the floor, tears in your eyes, but most importantly, a mission on your back for those who come after. If you adored Expedition 33's prologue as much as I did, drop a comment and tell me just how much it hooked you. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like so I know you want more dives into the stunning world of Clair Obscur. Well, grab your tissues, it's time to get into it. So in order to highlight the amazing display of show don't tell we see in the prologue, I'm going to start this analysis in reverse, beginning at the harbor, where everything we just fell in love with over the past 30 minutes is ripped away from us in gut-wrenching fashion. After spending time getting to know Gustave and Sophie's closest friends, and beginning to feel like we were a part of Lumiere's world, the game just turns. We may know the gist of the moment we're about to get into, but the screen gets hit with this red hue that doesn't just look different, it feels different. It's a tonal gut punch, and, well, it doesn't let up. Everything up to this point was sunshine and music you could hum forever, but now you feel the dread creep in and you know something's coming, but all you can do is watch. And while I hate them for what's to come, there are a few specific things that make this moment as emotionally gutting as it is. First, the cinematography. The direction of everything is just amazing. The scene centers on Gustave's wariness as they move to the end of the harbor, which feels excellently complemented by Sophie's look of acceptance in a moment so unfair. There's never a moment of rest, even with such a slow presentation of the circumstances. And as they settle in, the looks in each of their eyes show that they're expecting what's to come, but it's clear that doesn't make the moment any easier for them to digest. It does kind of feel like the moment is a bit drawn out, but it actually ends up working so well because we're so stunned by the flippant tone. It keeps your curiosity suspended in the moment as we're trying to figure out what the rest of these characters clearly already know. And as the mystery of the moment reaches its peak, the screen fades to black and white before the perspective changes and the paintress is revealed to have awakened, turning the bustling city of Lumiere we just lost ourselves in into nothing in the scope of her sheer size. What this monstrous figure may be isn't apparent to us yet, but that doesn't mean that the reactions from Gustave and Sophie don't tell us everything we need to know. She wipes the number 34 away, only to reveal that it doesn't count up, but down to 33. Letting the moment hang there for just a second longer to instill such a brutal sense of mystery. And once we focus back on the harbor, the camera gives us just enough visual space to process everything during the entire rest of the scene, to really feel what the fear in Sophie's eyes meant as Gustave and her hold each other and look around in horror. The second standout element of this scene is the music. The reality of the moment is softly presented to you by a simple piano and some backing vocals while the surrounding members of the gommage begin to fade away. But as soon as we're taken to the focal point of our concern in Gustave and Sophie, some heavy cello fills our ears as the song starts to take form and the two turn to face each other. And once the weight of the moment settles in, the tragedy carries on, bringing us deeper and deeper into sorrow for the countless families being torn apart before our eyes. That orchestral style of music consumes us in a way that escalates the sad moments we're watching one after another into legitimate tearjerkers before anything even happens to the ones we've personally grown attached to. It's kinda unreal how much the music impacts the emotional toll this scene took on players. The camera panning over the city shows that there are far more gommaging than we might be able to see in our vicinity. And we're taken to Maelle's perspective, who's a bit farther up in the celebration before a gorgeous violin kicks in, and we're brought back to Gustave and Sophie.
I'm here.
I know.
Aftermath of the gommage, as our main man struggles to stay strong, the music isn't done. It still swells and hangs in the air just long enough to make everything worse, calmly punching us in the gut as we deal with this in real time. And just when you think it's going to end, it picks back up to keep you in that pool of despair. It's not trying to force sadness, it's just there, letting Gustave's emotional devastation seep into our hearts as well. The intensity of the soundtrack makes what Gustave's facial expressions show us hurt to the core. It's likely the most devastating moment he's ever gone through. Ultimately though, the most impactful element of the scene, and this is the kicker, is everything that came before this entire moment. Because let's be real, the game tells you what's going to happen. It really does. But it does it in a way that you don't want to believe it. You pick up on little hints or subtle comments, but you're so busy getting swept up by the joy of reunion, of first love reignited, that you don't even notice the looming shadow overhead. That opening dialogue with Maelle? I mean, come on!
If you're gonna give someone flowers, you should probably do it before they wither and die.
What, the flower? Or Sophie?
Gustave jokes back, and we're honestly likely to latch onto the logic of the response, but in retrospect, that entire scene plays out completely differently. These characters have lived through the Gommage for years. They understand the rules of their world, and we don't. Even the newspapers scattered around the corner of our first steps in the game tell it all. They're out on display like any other headline you or I would find in our lives. But here they're highlighting something darker than any of us could begin to process. And that disconnect is what allows the foreshadowing to be so effective. Because to them, talking about disappearing isn't poetic, it's just Tuesday. They've always known what the Gommage means, we're the only ones in the dark. So when they speak so casually about love and death in the same breath, it flies right over our heads. Gustave's reunion with Sophie is maybe the best example of this. He's nervous, rose in hand, stumbling over his words, and it feels like a real human interaction. You're sold on this being a sweet love story. The rooftop traversal with Maelle and the tutorial fight, it all primes you for something lighter, something joyful. And because the characters are written so damn well, you buy it. You buy all of it. They speak like real people. Yeah, a little poetic, a little artsy, but never in a way that makes them feel fake. Their charm is what makes you lean in, and that's what makes it hurt more. You feel like these characters were likely the easiest to adore, only for some of them to be ripped away from any expectations we may have had for later down the road. That tutorial fight I mentioned, that's the game distracting you with clever pacing. It doubles as a way to cool off Gustave's nerves and distract you from the looming dread. So by the time you actually talk to Sophie, you're so focused on the romance that you completely miss the warnings baked into her words. When she talks about in a different world, you think she's just being dramatic. When Gustave says he's going to break the cycle, you think he's just puffing his chest out. But they told you. They absolutely told you. And it wasn't subtle on a second glance, we just didn't want to hear it. What we did want to hear though was the damn music. Here I am talking about it again. But I feel like I need to. It adds elements to this entire prologue that can't even hope to be achieved by any clever pacing of shrouded dialogue. It sets the mood. It gives you that sense of life and energy to continue exploring and discover the looming secrets. Though while there is tons of joy to glean from the song as we listen to it in the background, it can't be denied that there are hints of sorrow in its message. I'd really recommend to go check out this video by Marco Meatball where he dissects every bit of this entire track if you're interested. Oh, and while I'm doing shoutouts, have you enjoyed the video so far? If you have, why don't you subscribe? I do lots of Baldur's Gate 3 content already on my channel, and I'm hoping to expand into more beautiful fantasy worlds like Expedition 33. There's lots more to discuss in even just this game, so I'd love for you to be a part of the journey as it comes out. Now, when we reach the celebration, that's when the floodgates open, and you either piece it all together by the time you reach the harbor, or you don't. The brilliance of the sequence as a whole, though, is that it works either way. Whether you figure out what the Gommage truly is before it happens or not, it still hits. The difference is just whether you're scrambling to catch up emotionally or slowly sinking in dread because you finally understand what these characters have known all along. But once you know what it really is, every dialogue becomes haunting no matter the positivity within or lack thereof. Cyril complimenting Sophie and asking help with the newspaper is not just sweet small talk. That's him asking her to help write about her own death. The horrors of Sophie's responses didn't come across as what they truly were at first, but his reception of the suggestions sort of spelt out that while they were catchy and lighthearted headlines, there was no positivity in the subject matter they spoke of. The pale sun spoken of is rising over the crimson blossoms of a graveyard, and the expeditions have never been successful. Richard's dialogue is a bit more obvious, where in telling you about the argument with his son, it's not just about family, it's about legacy and regret, and dying on your own terms. Yet the death aspect may be picked up on, or it might not have been. I've watched a few of my friends play through the sequence, and some solved it before the celebration started, though others may have caught wind of the grief within the clear separation of families, but was never able to fully piece it together. And the conversation with Richard is an example of one that hits a bit harder only when knowing the full context of the situation. Similar to Eloise's bitterness, but that one's in a bit of a more straightforward manner. That's a daughter grieving a father taken by a pointless tradition she never believed in. That alone can be picked up straight from her words, but this is also where Gustave is revealed to be a part of the upcoming expedition. And while we're given a cute little combat encounter with a balloon to maybe bring us down to earth a little bit, there are some inferences we can make from what we heard in our favorite couples conversation below the tree earlier. This was how Gustave was fighting to change things, and if we had learned what we could about the expeditions from earlier conversations, combining that with the information that the fact that our main character is a part of the next one, it's only a few more conclusions you had to make in order to have understood that this is no light matter these expeditions fight for. Some conversations you'll stumble upon spell it out a bit more than others though, like if you had spoken to Raphael and heard the phrases "death comes to us all" or "we're all dead just catching up," you might have been thrown off a bit by the dark nature of the topic, but the phrasing of the entire conversation makes us even draw parallels to our own deadlines in life. It's incredibly obvious looking back, but dialogues as blunt as this even have elements that pull you out of the situation's reality. That aspect of these characters talking as if it's another day of the week that ends in Y allows the darkest words to stay shrouded in the casual nature of the back and forth. Marie's comment about people who don't want children? That's a quiet jab at those who fear death, who don't leave anything behind. It's pretty clear framing of what's going on, especially from Sophie's responses of the world being, quote, doomed. As a little side note, I really love what they did with Sophie's character in this celebration. It's very clear that Gustave is having a bit harder of a time dealing with all of this than she is. It felt pretty weird at first for her to make the comment about him and Lune, but that's her attempt of trying to relay that life goes on. But nothing compares to the gut-wrenching discussion with Maxime, who realistically is the only one here who doesn't have a sense of sugarcoating when it comes to the manner in which he talks about the gommage. It's almost odd to experience in a way, simply because of the attempt at optimism on display from many of the others at the celebration. Sure, there were the overall negative ones I mentioned, but like I said, even they have their elements of disguising the truth of the matter. Maxime, though, doesn't mince words. His daughter is grieving over her mother, his wife, and there's nothing left in Lumiere to make him take a positive outlook as it relates to the gommage. Not even his very own child, likely because he succumbed to the terrors that come along with their grief as well. It ties in a bit with what Marie was talking about with having children, and Sophie's stance comes to be a bit more understandable as we listen to this broken man tell of his perspective. Gustave implores him to go and comfort his daughter, likely the only sense of hope he has left, but it seems like he can't even fathom the idea of comfort at this point. He knows his daughter is doomed along with the rest of Lumiere, so why even try? These might be some drunken words, but it's likely how he truly feels, because the gommage is realistically one of the greatest tests of strength offered to the citizens of Lumiere, not concerning the combat strength required by the expeditioners, but the mental fortitude to be able to continue on with such a gloomy outlook over the horizon. It's such a deep and troubling perspective to wrap your head around, yet it's capable of being entirely misinterpreted by the player if they aren't keen enough to pick up on the clues. I was entranced by the music, the setting, the lightness of the writing, and somehow in a story that practically tells you what's going to happen, I still walked into that harbor without a clue. But who cares about anything we just digested when there's a goddamn mime just there? Why is he there? Oh, it's just another combat tutorial. Whoa, okay, I just wasn't paying attention, I guess. Jesus! I mean, I can't look bad in front of Sophie. Yep, rematch. Okay, we're done. Grab my reward and let's get out of here. I'm sorry, what was this all about? No joke, I think that was the intention of the developers. They drop bombshell after bombshell in these conversations, and it all starts to culminate as you get to the end of the celebration, but it's kind of a lot to process. And so they gave the players that break they needed to settle down before the big moment. Maybe the mime can be to us as Maelle was to Gustave on the rooftops, fighting to calm us down a bit. Not to mention the show of chroma put on display by Ciel and some other expeditioners to make you remember that this is realistically a celebration after all. It's pulling you away from what you just got so curious to figure out. You started to piece together the gommage, and they rely on their immersion breaking tricks to keep you from being prepared. But it's really not immersion breaking, it's just us taking part in the celebration. We're distracting ourselves from the doom of the situation, just like everybody here. And that's what makes this prologue a masterpiece. It doesn't hide the truth, it just waits for you to be ready to see it as it executes show don't tell to perfection. And once you have seen it, the lull of sorrow carries into the festival afterwards. Yeah, as much as it seems like the gommage carries the bulk of the prologue's climax, it doesn't quite end here. The game forces us to sit with our emotions as we gather the rest of the expeditioners preparing to venture into the continent. Turns out Maelle was right, they did need at least 5 tables this time, as there's quite a few ready to take part in this perilous journey. But while most of their spirits are higher than we might have been expecting, we can owe most of that to the countless bottles of wine scattered across the celebration. They really don't waste much time turning to the bottle as a way to stifle their sadness, but it certainly helps keep the mood above water, at least for the time being. Though maybe for them it does, but Gustave seems to want to process what he's going through a bit before loosening up. And it's truly the same for us as well. This is a moment for us to take the freight train that just hit us and sit with it a while before we focus back on what it all meant, what all of these brave souls are here for. It's an excellent way for the game to present information about the world we're about to embark on, as it keeps us right in line with what the expeditioners know themselves, almost entirely the opposite from what the previous portion of this prologue was telling us. Before, everything about the gommage was a mystery to us, but not the citizens of Lumiere. Now, the expedition ahead is only as familiar to the characters around us as the journals they've managed to scavenge can tell them, which isn't much, so it's bound to be an interesting experience to watch as they move from knowing more than us to just as much as us. And if you are still tense by this point, Maelle will be waiting by the dock to offer up another duel, and with a bit more experience in battles with balloons under our belt, this should be no problem.
Oh no, not again.
Speaking of Maelle, it's calming to see the youngest member of the expeditioners, somebody who has a whole 9 years left before her gommage, so eager to get out to the continent and away from Lumiere. And those who know, but at least there's somebody who has a legitimate nerve for the adventure ahead, and one who doesn't have to drown in drinks to achieve such a blunt perspective of the world. But in a bit of a different fashion, Gustave's goodbye to his sister Emma is the first interaction we've seen him in where we firmly know him to be a part of the expedition without clues through NPCs. And it's interesting to hear even more of the 2 different perspectives we just saw so much of before the gommage, because now it's much more personal to our main character. We're watching a sister plead to her brother to live the rest of his final year with those who love and look up to him, which keys us in to what kind of weight Gustave might be bearing as we're about to send off. He's got his apprentices, his sister, and all of those who admire his feats of engineering back in Lumiere. But he's also lost so much, and the more we acclimate ourselves with the company here at the festival, we begin to realize that all of what he'd be leaving behind is also here in the expedition, but just in a slightly different package. So once we move to Emma's speech and the epic preparation to depart, the mood is instantly lifted. Maelle looks ready to find a home out in the unknown. Lune seems excited to further her research. Ciel comes off as anxious to find purpose without her late husband. And finally, Gustave's nod to his apprentices feels like that prideful send-off that fills us with motivation to make Cyril's headline and tomorrow's paper ring true. Though as soon as Emma mentions that tomorrow comes thanks to Expedition 33, the title card appears accompanied by the Game Over theme. And with what's coming that concludes this roller coaster of a prologue, I can only assume it was intentional. As we arrive at the beach, we're greeted by that infamous tapping of a cane that will only become more prevalent as the game goes on, done by a man whose presence flies in the face of everything we just learned to be true about the number on the monolith. Though here's the moment where that progression of trending towards the same knowledge as the expeditioners reaches equilibrium. They're just as confused as we are to see this man with a full head of gray hair. The oldest person alive should be 32 years old, and that's about all the thinking both us and the expeditioners can do before the man swiftly cuts off Alan's head, bringing the moment to a dramatic crawl before bursting into chaos.
Fall back! Stop! Come on, we need to go!
It's just non-stop with this prologue, as we get to watch a miniature version of D-Day play out where nearly every member of the group is wiped through either the old man's astounding strength or the Noir patrolling the area ready to swipe survivors away. Does it just end here? Even Lucien, the head of the expedition, is taken from us right before our eyes. And I was seriously thinking for a second that we might end up playing as Expedition 32 as Gustave took one last look into the light of one of the Noirs. It swells up a dark chromatic blast, and as the beast fires it off, the screen goes black, before the Act 1 title screen appears, accompanied by a tranquil piano, letting us know that at least our main man survived. For now. I honestly had to take a break after experiencing this entire sequence for the first time. I've never been taken for quite such an emotional roller coaster so soon within any story-based game, and I came away with one major conclusion. I'm so thankful to these developers and writers for their faith in the player. It's so refreshing to be respected as the one with the controller in your hand, but they even took it so far as to be capable of showing you exactly what was going to happen without telling us a thing. The gommage, the monolith, and just the mission in general is already so enticing to us before we really even take a true first step into the bulk of the game. The concept was presented and the hook was set, yet we still didn't know a damn thing, and I think that's absolutely genius. Writers, take notes. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what you thought about my first video on Expedition 33, as I'm stoked to bring even more of it to you all. It's truly one of, if not my favorite game of all time. And if you're looking forward to more of it, be sure to like the video to let me know, and subscribe so you don't miss the next topic we'll be covering. There's lots to come. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh yeah, I can't forget, make sure you lore keepers continue figuring out fantasy.